What's up, everybody? Welcome back to TOJ Live. It's been a minute, but we're super excited to do this. How's everything with you, Russo? I feel like it's just been forever since we did our last stream.
I know it has been, but no, things are good with me. But how about you, man? Coming off your wedding, your honeymoon in Aruba, like talk to us about that. How you feeling? How you doing?
I'm feeling good, man. It's just, it's Jets football. I did find a way to watch the Commanders Jets game in Aruba. They do have New York TV there, so if you're ever thinking about going on vacation, they do have it. But overall, man, it's been, just kind of getting back in the swing of things. I feel like, with the Jets coming up, it's kind of creeped up. I, took some time off from really like being super locked in. I mean, I did check some things, but I was off Twitter for a little bit, but I'm back on it. But overall, last night was a complete snooze fest of a game. So we can't really, take too much for granted there. But how you doing?
I'm good. I mean, a little different than you. A couple different things have been dominating my life over the past few months. My son's baseball and all stars, youth sports, all that stuff, and just the summer and work kind of getting in the way. But now, like you said, I mean, it's August. It's mid-August right now, and Jets football is right around the corner. We're watching preseason, although it was a snooze fest, but still, I'm excited. I'm ready to get back into it, man. It's been a while, but this is the time, and I'm excited about this year. I think there's a lot of good things happening here, and I think it's a year where we really have a chance to take home the division and potentially make some noise in the playoffs here. So let's get rolling, bro.
Yeah, man, let's do it. So, like I said, last night was a complete snooze fest of a game, but I think the big thing here is that we saw Will McDonald actually, show like he's better than everybody else in the field with that awesome third down sack. Did a signature spin move, which I think is getting everybody excited. But overall, there wasn't a lot to take away. But I do want to say, I'm excited about him, whether Reddick is here or not. But what are your thoughts on Will McDonald? It seems like he's having a pretty good camp. Not quite the Jermaine Johnson year two leap, but it seems like he's making plays and, he made his presence known in both joint practices. What do you think so far?
Yeah, I think, I think it's hard to judge Will McDonald based on year one. So you're really hoping that year two, at least a leap comes in year two. And I think you're starting to see that. So the things that we've heard at camp and obviously showcasing last night, getting a sack, he played well, I thought, in the first preseason game against the Commanders. So this is what you're starting to hope for, is that he develops into a nice, third down edge, a nice third down rush option. Mm-hmm. What I think you kind of turn it into is it really starts to upset you, is because you think about how good this group really could be if and when they add Hassan Reddick into the mix. So I don't think that Will McDonald is completely ready to like replace that Bryce Huff role, but you at least see him kind of closing the gap. And, when you couple that with Jermaine Johnson making that year two leap and now into year three, and what we can expect from obviously Quinnen Williams, what you're hoping to get from guys like Kinlaw, like that's what you really want to start seeing out of this edge group. But again, it just makes me feel like, all right, well, if McDonald's ready to take that leap and you add Hassan Reddick into that mix, like how scary good this group really could be. And that's what the clock is ticking, and you want Joe Douglas and Hassan Reddick to just get this deal done and get him into camp. But overall, Will McDonald, I'm happy with the progress he's made. I think he's going to be, at least an impact player in some way, shape, or form come this season. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, man. I mean, listen, I'm tempering my expectations. I do know that he was a bit more of a project from a pass rush perspective, but obviously the tools and the skill set is there. He obviously, has changed his body a bit as well from what he was playing at last year. But again, I'm not expecting him to look like, Max Crosby or, Myles Garrett. Like I'm hoping, because I think he had 3 sacks as a rookie, which honestly is solid considering how little his, snap count was in 2023. Yeah. But if this guy could get, 7 to 8 sacks this year, I think that would be a huge win, assuming you do have a Hassan Reddick on the field who's capable of getting, 12 to 15, assuming he's healthy. And obviously Jermaine is somebody that we're expecting to, inch towards 10 plus. But again, I need to see the full picture, from a defensive perspective of like who's out there if Reddick's playing. Because I do think if Reddick is not playing week 1 against San Francisco, Will McDonald's going to be on the field almost as an every down player. And I don't know if he's 100% ready for that role. I mean, if he could show that he is, then the Jets could really, use that from a defensive line edge perspective. But yeah, I'm excited, but I'm also trying to keep my expectations in check.
I know. And you think of how important that edge group really is and what Salah's defense is really all about in the front seven. And you think back to games in the the past 2 years, right? You think back to the Buffalo win in 2022, closing out that game and how important Bryce Huff was to that. Then you think back to the win last year against Buffalo, last year against Philadelphia, and on those late drives, like how important that edge group and that defensive line and that front seven was to closing out the win. Like that's what you want to be able to continue to replicate. And the absence of Bryce Huff, the absence of Hassan Reddick, now you need someone obviously to fill that role or those roles, whatever, however you want to say it. So it's obviously an extremely important position. It's an extremely important factor for this team. And knowing, hopefully, that they're going to have a much improved offense and they're going to be playing with the lead, hopefully more often than not, like it just makes it that much more valuable. So getting someone in there that can take that leap and then coupling him, hopefully, with a guy like Reddick, like they need to get this done. And I'm sure we can segue into the Hassan Reddick situation at this point too.
Yeah, I feel like we've been due to talk about this, given the fact we haven't done streams together really, since the beginning of the summer. But yeah, I just think that anyone who's saying that Hassan Reddick is not, needed and the Jets defense is fine without him, stop lying to yourself. Like we could be excited and giddy about what this, front seven could look like, with all the pieces that they do have currently without him. But we don't have someone who if they're healthy can get double-digit sacks. We had that guy in Bryce Huff. He's not here anymore. We don't need to talk about it anymore because, everyone who's followed you and I, since Bryce Huff really got here, they know that we've been a big fan of him. We were banging on the table for them to pay him, as early as like October of last year, going all the way until he went to Philadelphia. But at the end of the day, both sides are not handling themselves well. So you can't really put blame in one place. I know like Joe did like a pie on Twitter of like who to assess blame to, but at the end of the day, I will not give the benefit of the doubt to the New York Jets until they show me that they deserve it. And whether you agree or disagree with me, that's okay. I'm just telling you, a team that has a 14-year playoff drought and, and counting, assuming that they can, get out of that, terrible trend later this year, there's no reason to give them the benefit of the doubt because they traded for a player and just be like, oh, we'll worry about the contract later. And you could say, he promised them this, he promised them that, but you ever heard the expression, get it in writing, aka get a new contract in place before you actually trust it? They fell victim to that, and that's on them. I will say, going on to his side of things, I just think, the market was clearly not very big for him. He doesn't have options because if he did have options, teams would probably be reaching out to the Jets, which you haven't heard a thing. The teams are trying to get him off their hands because they know this contract needs to be a lot higher than what it is right now, which is like $14 million. And I know that they made some sort of team-friendly offer. I don't even count that as anything because essentially it was like they did it just to say they did it. They could put it out in the press release. But again, he should, at the very least, if he doesn't want to practice, that's fine. There's plenty of guys around the league, the Jamar Chases, the Brandon Ayuks, the CD Lambs of the world who are holding in. He should be at the minimum doing that. That is the one thing that I'm mad at him about. I'm not mad at him about wanting more money. I understand, but he can't expect to get long-term money. He's turning 30, I think in October of this year. So you typically see that most guys, they typically tail off at that point in their career. Not to say he can't be a productive pass rusher, but I don't think he's going to be the guy who had four straight double-digit sack seasons. It's unfair to expect that, but again, he could prove me wrong. So it's where I stand. I think there's definitely blame to be had across the board. I think Woody actually might be the biggest to blame because it seems like he's being cheap from shelling out the money. I get it. He doesn't want to tie to future years because, who knows if Joe Douglas, Robert Saleh are going to be here next year, depending on how this happens, even Aaron Rodgers for that matter. But at the end of the day, pay him more this year. Like that you could do at the very minimum. You could pay him, 22, 23 million. They have the money. I get that they're trying to sit on some cap space so they can acquire Devontae later in the year. But again, do it. It's a win now year. Everyone's job is on the line. And I just don't think that they're handling themselves well, even if he's wrong as well. So I know that was long-winded, but I've been kind of like holding these thoughts in. I've been putting them out on Twitter, a little, crumbs of everything of how I feel. But I just think that it's tough to give the Jets the benefit of the doubt here.
Yeah, I think well said. I think you encapsulated it pretty well there. And I don't disagree really with anything that you did say or recap. Like, I think this, first of all, like the trade request is, I'm not hitting the panic button on that. I think it's kind of the logical next step for both sides, right? They're both kind of planting their stakes in the ground and they're playing this inevitable game of chicken that at some point someone is going to win. I don't think that it ends in a trade. I think they will end up getting a deal done. It's just a matter of when. Like, is it, after week one, the Jets, lose a heartbreaker in San Francisco and the defense didn't really show up, or they couldn't get any pressure on Brock Purdy, whatever it is. And it's like, okay, listen, we really have something here. We need them. Or do the Jets kind of bite the bullet and say, screw this? Like, we have a team that really can win. We need them in here now. We don't know the answer, obviously. I do agree with you that the blame is there to go around. I think, the Jets, when you trade for a player, and Hassan Reddick, when he came on board, committed that he would be there. The Jets want to see him. Hassan Reddick's like, pay me first. Like, the battle it's split down the middle, and the blame is there to go around. I think my real issue here is with A, like the Jets historically, and B, the Jets mishandling of this specific position since you mentioned middle of the season last year. Like, the Jets haven't had a legitimate edge rusher since John Abraham. So they get one, and they finally get one in Bryce Huff. You had every chance to extend him in the middle of the season, and you completely just scoffed at it and botched it.
Ridiculous.
and didn't do it. You had a homegrown, undrafted rookie free agent that you brought to this level to get to a double-digit sack season, who was 25, and you just let him walk for nothing. Then, and we were all happy about it, you pivot and you do probably the next best thing you could do, and you trade for Hassan Reddick. So that fills the hole. Like, everything that you screwed up with this Bryce Huff situation, for the most part, gets rectified with bringing in Hassan Reddick. You get a premier edge rusher that's had double-digit sacks in 4+ seasons that immediately adds to your defense. And now you're finding another way to botch it. That's the part that really just makes me mental. It's like, you guys have this team that's clearly win now. You've, without saying it, you've done everything to let everyone know that you're in this win now 2-year window potentially, and you're deciding to, kind of dig your heels in on this specific player and specific issue. Like, just get it done. And it really just bothers me just because of this specific position and the way that they've handled this over the course of 20 years, but really over the last, 11, 10 months. And that's the frustrating part. And it's, I don't know what else to say. They just have to bite the bullet, get it done. There is something in the back of my mind that thinks maybe they're holding on to cap space, hoping the Devontae Adams trade is potentially going to come in the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season. Who knows? But ultimately, Hassan Reddick is a key piece to this defense and something that will absolutely set this team and this D over the edge. And I think it's got to get done. And it's just infuriating that we're at this point.
My biggest complaint about the franchise is they always make things harder than they need to be. And that's really what they're doing here. And I feel like they've been doing this for years and years. Doesn't matter who the coach is. Doesn't matter who the general manager is. Doesn't matter who's playing for the team. They always find a way to make things more difficult than they need to be. And that's why I'm annoyed. It doesn't I get it that there are reasons that they shouldn't, shell out a lot of money to him just because of the age, just because he's never played for them. But again, if you want to be treated with respect and, stop getting the Florios of the world to, rip the Jets and rip Aaron Rodgers for everything you do, act like a normal, competent franchise. And when they act like this, they're not doing that. And that's what frustrates me. So we could put this to bed because at this point, nothing's changing. The hope is that something can happen this week. I think if you can somehow get this done, before the Giants game to allow him to really have, 3 weeks of preparation and real camp practices, I think you'll be in a good spot and you won't see a ripple effect of, how his, preparedness, I don't know if that's the right word here, but really just if he's like game ready, you know what I'm saying? Because we've seen like with other guys, it takes them time if they don't, they sit out the entire, month of August and then they just come back for week 1. I think like Chris Jones came back for week 2.
Yep.
And it probably took him some time to get back to being his usual self. So that's where I stand here, but let's put this to bed. But I know you have one more point.
I just the injury thing. I think back to historically Darrelle Revis in 2010 with the holdout, and he came in week 2 popped his hamstring against the Pats. Like I think Nick Bosa, kind of same thing. You saw last year he held out, and I think it took him a while to get back to his regular self. But to your point too that you just made, like the vibes could not have been better. Like everything was going well. This, the holdout was like, it was still lingering over, but a lot of us were like, okay, we get it by August 5th or August 12th or whatever. Like that's the drop dead date. But Aaron Rodgers is back, looking great, moving well. The offense is firing. Garrett Wilson looks primed for this incredible year. Like the vibes are high. And this is like the Jets have a guy that they traded for, demand a trade before even setting foot on a practice field. Like the same LOL Jets, same old Jets kind of shit that you just want to get rid of and not hear again. But they just keep, to your point, dude, they keep giving you reasons and giving people reasons to say those things. And that's why it just an added cherry on top as to why it's so infuriating that stuff happens. I really wish they could, I really wish they could just make it make sense and make things easier and not have to.
But they don't.
Simple. They don't. So difficult.
They love to do this, but
yeah,
I digress. So anyway, let's move off of this subject. It's just gonna get me angry, and I don't want to be. It's Sunday morning. It's summer. Like the Jets just won their second preseason game.
The vibes are still good.
Robert Saleh, preseason GOAT, 9-2-1 in his career as a head coach in the preseason. So we gotta give him his flowers. Just kidding, but he's basically trying to challenge John Harbaugh. It sounds like. Anyway, I want to go back to some positives. I want to talk about Brandon Codrington, who is now becoming a fan favorite based on his performance yesterday. Russo, I know you didn't get a chance to catch the entire game, but I know you saw bits and pieces, and understandably so. You really didn't miss anything. If you actually look at Twitter, you'll see that you basically missed a Will McDonald third down sack, some nice punt returns, and really inept quarterback play. But overall, the defense did look good. But I want to talk about Cod the God, as I've coined. People could sell it for me. I don't really care, but I know Xavier Gipson is pretty much locked in Penn to being our kick returner and also punt returner, but I really think Codrington could be interesting, and I think he showed something yesterday. I don't think he's going to be guaranteed a 53-man spot, but I think he should be at the minimum on the practice squad, which Antoine Staley replied to me saying he does think that that's going to happen based on how he's performed all summer. But if you're thinking about the wide receiver position and really how thin they are from a depth perspective, you should really trot this guy out there and allow Gipson to be a full-time offensive player and let this guy handle kicks, or at the very minimum, like rotate these guys based on, the game flow, how much, how involved Gibson's going to be on offense, because this guy's got burst. He's fast. He's shifty. He may be excited. I think this guy deserves a shot. And I know our guy, Paul Kilgallen, host of The Other Guys, Badlands guy, has been banging on the drum for a couple weeks now. We got to give him his flowers. He was on this, but what do you think? Do you think he should get a shot, or do you think they should just stick with Gipson?
It's hard to say, right? And I think he's obviously shown flashes, and I think, especially on the kick return side, right, it's going to be even more important than it pretty much ever has been now, especially in the last 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it is. But I kind of pull it back a little bit. Like, it's kind of fascinating that we're in this spot now where the roster is really that good, where you're talking about maybe 2, 3, 4 guys that are really battling for the final spots of this roster, where, in years past, we're talking maybe 10, 15, which is kind of crazy. So it's nice to have. But Codrington, I think he shows flashes. I think it's going to be interesting how they break down, what they do at gunner. I know I've seen Will Parkinson tweet, and good for him, and he knows this stuff really well, obviously. But if they put Stiggers and Eccles as gunners, maybe that frees up a spot, because Irv Charles is kind of their guy, and that's been Brant Boyer's pick. Is they got to have Irv Charles there as a gunner. So the roster gymnastics is going to be extremely fascinating to see what they do. How many tight ends do they carry? Do they carry a Boa? What do they do at wide receiver? Do they shift Gipson more to a wide receiver role? Does that make him more important and make injury risk that much more important for him to open up a space for Codrington? So I don't know. I think thinking logically, I think even though he flashed and as good as he did look, I still probably err on the side of they'll stash him on the practice squad.
Yeah,
they'll keep what they have here. I think it's going to be interesting to see where the Brownlee, Taylor, Irv Charles, is it Irv? I think Irv Charles or Irv Smith. Why do I always confuse that? The Irvs. Irv Charles, how that kind of shakes out. And I think those are the kind of the interesting things. And I also think they probably are in a 4 or 5 safety question too. Like, who do they keep after Ashton Davis? Like, there's gonna be some questions, but at least it's not for really important spots, starting spots or depth spots on the team. I think this is where we want to be.
Yeah. I basically, whenever people ask me my thoughts on the season, it's the number one thing is if Rodgers could play more than 4 plays. That's number one. Number 2, and then the question marks, it's wide receiver depth and safety. That's really where my the things that I can have my concerns about. But overall, beyond that, I don't have a lot of questions about the roster, especially the way the offensive line has looked. I know Joe Tippmann had the case of the yips a couple of weeks ago. It seems like that has passed over. I mean, he hasn't really had a lot of live bullets. I know he played in week 1, but he didn't play this past week. But again, it's a problem when it actually matters. So if it's happening in practice, get it all out now, and then we can move forward. I do want to talk about Stiggers and Eccles and really just the depth of the cornerback room, because those two guys are going to be, depth pieces off the bench. I would imagine that Stiggers is going to be the gunner. I mean, he's just an electric factory. But I was really impressed to see what they were doing, on defense. I think that they really held their own. I know they weren't playing against starters, but Terrace Marshall's been in the league for a little bit. Jordan Matthews, who I couldn't believe is still alive, is in the league. He was playing. I was like stunned when I saw his name. I'm like, is that the same guy who played for the Eagles with Chip Kelly? It certainly is. He's bounced around the league. It seems like he's just been more of a situational role player at this point in his career. But they were doing everything they could, had great defensive reps. JBC, I know he had actually got hurt with a groin injury yesterday. I think everything should be okay with him for the regular season. Doesn't sound like it was too serious, but given it's a preseason game, they probably want to hold him out because he is someone they expect to make the roster based on his camp. But the defense as a whole was really, really solid. I know they weren't playing, a world-beating offense. It was Jack Plummer, who I had to check 100 times to see if he was related to Jake the Snake Plummer. No relation, which I thought was kind of sad because Jake Plummer was a fun quarterback in the early to mid-2000s. But again, they held their own. I think Michael Clemens should be cut. That's just me. I know that they were a little bit thin on the interior, and he kind of goes a little bit inside and out. But I have no complaints about the defense. It's really about wide receivers beyond, Garrett Wilson and hopefully a healthy Mike Williams when he gets his legs back, and, safety, because I think Tony Adams certainly is a starter. And I think that Chuck Clark could be a guy that we really don't remember because he never played it down for the Jets. He got hurt in OTAs last year, but he has been a solid player, but you don't know how he's going to be coming off the injury. And Action is a nice situational Swiss Army knife who could play nickel, can play safety, can do specials. So it's just more, there's not like a superstar at that position. But again, you can't be perfect at all levels of the defense.
Yeah. And your hope is that the cornerback room is good enough to where it will hide any of the weak spots that the safety room has. But I think you're absolutely right. I think we've seen Brandon Eccles in spot starts or getting chances to play with the starters, and I think he's held up well. I think you obviously feel better about Stiggers being kind of the ball hawking guy that he is over a guy like Bryce Hall. And then from the safety room, I think you feel pretty good. I think Chuck Clark's going to be an upgrade over Jordan Whitehead. I think Tony Adams getting another year under his belt will obviously be better. And I think Ashton Davis is, to your point, I think what you just said is a good situational player, and he kind of like quietly has just a nose for the ball. Like he always just kind of comes up with a rare pick or finds a fumble. Or I think, even in that last game against New England last year, he had a pick and then a fumble, and then didn't he maybe recovered a fumble or something to seal it, something like that. But either way, like I just think you feel really good about the defense overall. And I think the cornerback room is the strength of that team or of that unit. And again, it goes back to getting Hassan Reddick in because that just adds, stuff over the top. But I want to switch gears too and talk about something you mentioned is really the biggest outside of Aaron Rodgers' injury last year, right? The biggest flaw of this team was the offensive line, the depth issues, the injuries, like what we're seeing early in camp. And I think last year it was really when they went to Carolina. I think Carolina's defensive front ate that offensive line up, and that's what we saw in Hard Knocks. And Robert Saleh kind of read on the riot act. And this year, it seems like complete flip of the coin, complete 180. Offensive line held up extremely well. And what they've done to get Tyron Smith, John Simpson, Joe Tippmann now with a year under his belt, AVT back, Morgan Moses, Fashanu now working left tackle and right tackle. Like, this is all we've asked. So you think about how good we felt coming into the 23 season with Aaron Rodgers at the helm. And now, like, this offense specifically is so much improved over what that roster looked like. Garrett Wilson with another year under his belt. Mike Williams added in. Tyler Conklin poised for a big year. Breece Hall, right, with all he did last year. Like, this offense in general is going to be so much improved. It could actually be fun for us. And I can't, like, on a high level, the Jets went 7-10 with Zach Wilson and Tim Boyle and Trevor Siemian last year, like,
Don't remind
I
me.
know things don't exist in a vacuum, but like, as simply as I can think about it, you can't tell me that Aaron Rodgers isn't worth at least 4 more wins with that, right?
Yep.
And like everything's different, just every season's different, roster schedule, like all that. I get it, but like, you can't tell me that Aaron Rodgers doesn't win 4 of those games. Like, you just can't, right? And that's what really excites you, is like, I love the Jets defense. I think they could go half speed and still be a top 10 unit in this league. But the offense is what really excites me. And what Joe Douglas and this team has done from the offensive line perspective, completely flipping that unit and making it hopefully a strength of this team. And that's also what you're hearing out of camp, is how much they're opening holes up for the running backs, like their run blocking, how good that is. Like, that's the stuff that really gets me excited, is that we're not going to – take the race to 20 that Robert Saleh said out of your vocabulary. We're not going to hear that anymore. Like, this is going to be a team that's going to score points. They're going to have leads. Like, it's going to be a shift. And if they stay healthy, that's what really excites me, is I think Garrett Wilson, and I tweeted it out the other day after watching one Jets drive. Garrett Wilson, I think, is skyrocketing into my top 5 Jets and maybe my favorite Jet of all time. Like, year 3, like, this dude is just, he's unreal. He's such a good kid. He's such a good talent. He's going to be awesome. This is his year. He's going to have an insane year. So I said a lot there, but specifically on the offense, man, I'm really excited about what they can do.
Yeah. I think that you had some great points. I think the one thing that people always ask me about, like, what do I think the offense is going to look like, is I think they're going to run the ball a lot more than people think. I've heard from people, they're like, oh, like, I don't know if I should take Breece Hall that high in fantasy. I'm like, no. I could be biased here, but I'm going off of what I believe and just other factors. I would take, in a PPR league, Breece Hall number 1 overall over Christian McCaffrey, even before the injury. And the reason I say that is Breece Hall is going to get so many touches, assuming he's healthy. Obviously, the big caveat is staying healthy, but we were only getting really, a glimpse of what he's capable of with some of the worst quarterback play in the league. I get it that he may not be getting all the short passes again, just because there's going to be more options from a pass game perspective with a real quarterback. But again, the way the offensive line has been rebuilt, the way that we expect the holes to be just that much better, him running to the left side behind Ty Smith, him going behind AVT, who's excellent in run blocking. It's just, I'm so excited to see what this team could do from running the football. I truly think that we're going to be talking this time next year, assuming Breece is healthy, that he's the consensus number 1 pick in fantasy, because Christian McCaffrey will probably still be really good, but I think that the age and the mileage is going to catch up with him. It's not that I don't think he'll be good. It's just, why wouldn't you want someone who is, 24 years old or 23 years old, whatever Breece is at this point in his career, and ascending, and he's actually going to be going into a contract year at that point. So it's like, that's how excited I am. And we're not even really talking a lot about Fashanu just because he's not starting, but he quietly has had a really good training camp. It's like everything you hear about is really positive, no matter whether they're putting him on the left side, the right side. I said this in the Discord the other day, and I truly believe this, and I think other people are starting to come along to this line of thinking. I think that he might be too good that they can't keep him on the field. And I think he's going to be playing right tackle a lot sooner than people think. I'm not going to say that, it's definitive, but I think that they really like what they see from him. I think Morgan Moses is coming off an injury. It's not that I don't like the guy. I thought he was great for the Jets in 2022. But again, I'm sorry, 2021, I take it back. I think that he is, 33, and I think Fashanu has fresh legs, and there was a huge reason why they're trying him out on both sides, because they know there is a possibility this guy's going to get on the field. So I think my bold prediction really for the first, month of the season is that Fashanu plays his way into the lineup, just because he's that good, and maybe Moses isn't 100% from his injury from last year. So I feel strongly about that, and I think that the Jets really like what they have. And I would say baby Brick to Brickashaw 2.0. I mean, he has a long way to go to get to that point, but based on everything you're hearing from an early returns perspective, he's so young. He's 21 years old. I am so giddy about Fashanu.
I agree. I think it's great. I think, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. Like, he's just too good. Like, he's instantly he's your 6th lineman, obviously, but I think we're going to get to a point where he's going to continue to progress, and they're just going to have a hard time not putting him in the best 5. And that's what you're going to see. To your Breece Hall point, I think he's going to be the best fantasy running back, best fantasy player this year. Like,
or most valuable, just depends on
yeah,
the league scoring. Yeah.
yeah, I just like what he did last year with the quarterback situation
It's
was
insane.
insane. Now you have Aaron Rodgers, you have an improved offensive line, and you have a legitimate number 2 option at running back as well. Like that's only, hoping that Nate Hackett can get a little creative, put him and Braylon Allen in 2 back sets and just be that much more dynamic. Like I can't wait to see what this offense can do. I think the age of seeing your number 1 running back get 300, 350 carries is gone. You're not going to see that anymore. But thinking about Breece getting 250 to 275 carries and then catching another 60 to 80 balls, like that's well within the realm of possibility. And I think you could see him kind of approach that 1,800 to 2,000 total yards range. I really do believe that. The other thing that I think is Garrett Wilson's going to go off this year, and I think he may seriously break that Brandon Marshall record for yards in the season. Like I think he could go over that 1,500. This could be the best. Like if Mike Williams comes back healthy, this could be the best 1-2 punch that we've seen since Marshall and Decker in that 2015 season, and that's what excites me. I mean, even though they missed the playoffs, like you think everything back to that 2015 year,
It was fun, man.
It was the most fun we've had since 2010. Like it was a lot of fun watching that. And you just felt like, all right, Ryan Fitzpatrick's going to throw it up and Brandon Marshall's going to be there. Or, Eric Decker's going to run a post or a seam over the middle and he's going to be there. Like that team was so good. I think they both had 10 plus touchdowns that year. Like it was insane. It was a lot of fun up until week 17 in Buffalo. But that's kind of what we can expect from the offense. And the sheer fact that we're talking about this is just, it's awesome. And it's a lot of fun that we're talking about good, like realistic, good offense.
Yeah. Well said. I think that there's just so much excitement. It's like, I'm ready to get hurt again. That's what I keep telling everybody. Like, I'm just ready to get hurt again. But again, until that point comes, I'm going to be excited. I'm going to try to be as optimistic as I can. I think the one cool thing about really the running back room is that Braylon Allen looks a lot better than we ever could have expected at this point. I know it's only been preseason and like joint practices, but he's going to play. Like it's not just like, if Breece gets hurt, he's going to play. Like this guy's going to have a role for short yardage situations. Like I wouldn't be surprised if he's getting, maybe 5 to 7 touches a game. I mean, maybe I'm generous here, but I do think that they like what they see from him. He's different than Breece from a running style. He's just a physical bruiser. He's huge. He's like 6'1", almost 240, which is crazy for a running back in this day and age. Usually they're a lot smaller. But I think that's actually a really good thing for Breece, so they can keep him fresh. They can, try to reduce the mileage on him. I know we all were yelling week 18 last year when he's getting 35 touches when they're playing in a meaningless game. I know that they wanted to beat the Patriots, but my God, that was just some terrible coaching. But I'm really excited about Braylon Allen. I think Isaiah Davis has been awesome as well. I think he's probably going to be a special teams contributor at the minimum. Mm-hmm. And I know we're sad about Izzy, but there's a chance he makes the roster. I would say it's outside chance, but I think that he might make the roster, but we'll see what happens. I think at the minimum, he might be on the practice squad at this point because the other 2 guys I think are definitely going to be 53-man locks.
Yeah, I agree. I agree on Braylon Allen too. I think if the best comparison that I've had is him being a 01 to 03 Lamont Jordan. And that's really like, right. And like, because there were times like you think back, like he was the perfect complement to Curtis Martin. Curtis Martin was more of a shifty guy, not a ground and pound, right? He was going to get you, the 10, 12 yards, but Lamont Jordan came in and was a bruiser. Now, Breece Hall is a little bit different. Like Breece Hall is a game breaker, and Breece Hall can punish you too, because he's a big dude too, but he is, like, to your point, Braylon Allen is a compliment. And you got to think, from a defensive standpoint, if I just spent, 60 yards getting chopped up by Breece Hall, and now they bring in this bruiser, this 6'1", 240-pound guy that's going to run me over, like that exhausts the defense. And late in the fourth quarter, like that exhausts the defense. And I just think even as great as Curtis Martin was, there were times where he just didn't have it. And you bring in Lamont Jordan, and he did, and he had the juice. And that's kind of like, I just like where this offense is heading. I like what they've done. I like the complementary style that they have. I like Garrett Wilson being the guy that's extremely shifty, that can get open, that he, is in a phone booth and can make every catch. I like Mike Williams being the 50-50 ball guy, the deep ball guy. I like the complement of Conklin. I think he's going to have a big year. Even if Alan Lazard can just be a reasonable 3-4, like he was for Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, like that's also complimentary. A big body guy that can block, like Braylon Allen, Breece Hall, Isaiah Davis, like all of this, it's complimentary football, and they're set up, and they're a much bigger team too with all these guys. Like they've done a nice job here, and it's up to Nate Hackett not to screw it up.
Oh man, we haven't talked about him in a while, and I don't really want to. I'm still worried, but I will say he got rid of his weird goatee, so maybe he'll coach better. I don't know. But like, yeah, I feel like, just hearing that they tried to actively like demote him. I mean, keep him on the staff because he's Aaron's guy. And it's just, that is a little concerning. But again, if Aaron's playing, I feel pretty good about the offense because he's going to really, do whatever he feels is necessary in order to, get the right plays in and make changes at the line and everything like that. So we'll see. But this has been awesome, Russo. I know it's been a while. I had a busy 2024, but I can finally breathe. For anyone who wasn't aware, I was planning my wedding. I got married 2 weeks ago, and I do appreciate everyone who congratulated me. It's awesome. But yeah, now I can actually just be like a real human again. Do what I love, which is watching this team, talking about this team, tweeting about this team, and just getting excited because football is like so close. Like we're chopping at the bit. A week from now, we'll be talking about college football. It'll be week 0, which is always fun, and that kind of is like the appetizer to the NFL. But Russo, any closing thoughts? As we wrap up our first live stream in a bit.
Yeah, I'm excited to get back after it. This was fun. I'm glad everything went well with you and the wedding. It was awesome. Steph and I enjoyed ourselves. You guys, you did great. It was amazing. The venue, everything was awesome. Here's what I'll say about this upcoming Jet season is this is what I've been saying is I think last year, a lot of us can attest. I know for me, 2023 was the worst season I've ever endured in my 38 years of fandom. Like I've been through the Kotite years. I've been through the Vinny rupturing his Achilles year. I've witnessed Brooks Bollinger, Kellen Clemens, like all of that. 2023, when you combine the expectations, the vibes being good heading in the week 4, the play 4 going down, and then the little glimmer of hope that they gave us in, mid to late October, followed by the collapse. It was the worst year. And here's what I really feel. I think that was rock bottom for us. And I think we endured it for a reason. And I think we're going to come out much, much, much better in 2024. I don't want to go as far as to say this is our year, but I think it could be something special, and we're going to see this team do some good things. And I really do. I think 11-6 is that's kind of where I fall, but I really believe 12-5 and division winner, and I think they have a chance to make some noise in the playoffs. I really believe that. I think this could be, from a holistic standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint. I just think we endured last year to get to where we are, and we're going to come out on the other side of this. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. I mean, everyone's talking about record and whatnot. My thing is like, just make the playoffs. I don't care how you get there. Make the playoffs and win. Like it's all you got to do is get in, and then you never know what can happen. That's the 2015, what could have been from us, because the Jets were a really good team. I think they were a pretty balanced team. I think they were just an average, from a coaching staff perspective, it was an average coaching staff. And that was probably what was their, downfall. But again, that was such an open year that anything was possible. And I think that this year, same thing. I mean, obviously you got to slay the dragon and Patrick Mahomes, but I do think the Jets are set up for success to do that. I mean, we saw last year, they went toe to toe with them. So you never know what could happen. But, as we close this out, we definitely want to integrate more callers. I know last time we did a stream a couple months ago, it was really successful. So, we will continue to provide the links. We're going to be doing streams more often. We will start putting these back on the podcast feed. If you are somebody who likes it on Apple and Spotify and doesn't want to look at our faces, totally don't take offense to that. I get it. Sometimes it's just better to listen. You can kind of focus on other things. But yeah, a lot more to come. We'll do some more, as the season goes on, and you'll get stuff every week. And, make sure you're subscribing to Badlands on Patreon. I know there's a lot of cool things that are being cooked up. New show coming on Thursdays. I don't know exact date. I think it's the 29th, Joe said. Every day there's stuff, and you'll get this on YouTube and also on Spotify and Apple. So we appreciate everybody who's tuned in. I know it's early in the morning. Well, not really, just depends on where you are, but it is 10:30 in the morning. But thank you guys, and we'll talk to you soon.